as well?
It is recording. Yep, it's recording and
Will be.
live to the web shortly.
Okay.
Yep, it's up there now.
Good. Okay, I see it. Well, the clock just now rolled over to 1:30, so I'll give another 30 seconds for people to join. Jennifer, do you have any indication of how many people plan to attend? Roughly?
I only had a couple say they couldn't attend, so.
Yeah, okay,
But we can't vote on anything today with it being virtual.
right.
But looks like what I see right now looks like we're getting some more people coming in.
Yep. Looks that way. Okay, well, it's just past 1:30. Why don't we go ahead and call the meeting to order? Chris and Brian, if you guys are ready, we'll start and get going.
We can proceed.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We'll call this September meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee to order. It's 1:31 in the afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. If we could have Jennifer call the roll, we'll find out who's in attendance.
Bob Pinion,
Here.
Bill Roberts,
Here.
Bob Widmer,
Here.
Lynn Gruber White did say she would be absent today. Josh Frank.
Present.
Richard Bedford also said he'd be absent. Richard Balcom. Maureen Tucker. Travis Norton. Oh, I see
Travis
you.
was on.
I'll mark you here. Leonardo DeSwords.
Here.
Bill Johnson. Rick Richmond.
Here.
Rob Serku. David Goodwin.
Here.
Karen Mullins.
Here.
I see Karen Schwartz, you're here as well.
Here.
And Sarah Calhoun.
Here.
We may go ahead and proceed.
Okay, is that it? All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. I'm glad we have really good attendance today. The next item on our agenda is the public comment. Ken Bowden is monitoring that. Ken, did anybody indicate they want to speak in public comment?
We don't have comments at this time right now, Bill.
Okay, thank you. Our consent agenda consists of the minutes of the meetings from June and August. Without a quorum in this virtual meeting, we really can't vote on them, but are there any comments or corrections to the minutes for those of you in attendance? Any comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to comment on the August.
Bob, go ahead.
If you remember during new business, I had talked about the article in the Tampa Times regarding Commissioner Kemp and the history of her disparaging remarks about both the TBARTA organization and the BRT. And at the end, there were no pro and con comments. And of course, since there was no quorum, I did not request a recommendation or a vote of any kind. I'd like to, with the chairman's permission, I'd like to revisit this again during new business.
Okay,
And also add that to the August, unless somebody said that we can't have that kind of commentary in the minutes.
So there's not a rule that we can't have that kind of commentary, but through the past year or so, we've tried to kind of keep the minutes to action items. But if you know, going forward, if there's something like this that you want to make sure I include, I'll definitely do that. And I can go back and listen again if you'd like, and I can add that back in if that's what you're requesting right now.
Yes, Jennifer, if you could make it very short
Okay.
and pithy, but certainly I did not wish to attack a person individually. However, any comments that she has made have been debunked. And as I said, she has personally, to the group and to the project, have been quite disparaging. Thank you.
Care of that.
thanks Jennifer for commenting.
We'll get to look at it next month.
Yeah, okay. The, any other comments or corrections on the minutes for the June or August meetings? Hearing none, we'll move on and we'll come back to those when we are able to have a quorum and can take some action. The next item on our agenda is the PSTA AVA shuttle report. I'm anxiously looking forward to this, Jacob, so we'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Hello, everybody. So I'm Jacob Labutka. I'm a senior planner at the Pinellas Sun Coast Transit Authority, and I'm the project manager for our very successful autonomous vehicle demonstration program called Autonomous Vehicle Advantage, or AVA. And TBARTA is a very significant funding partner for the current iteration of the demonstration. So we currently have an MOU with TBARTA where we split the cost 50-50 for the operations of the demonstrations we are currently operating or will be continuing to operate in the future. So let me go ahead and share my screen for y'all. All right, can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Go back here. Okay, great. So PSTA's, autonomous vehicle journey, if you will, started with PSTA's desire and need to excel in the world of what I'll call transportation innovation, to make sure that we keep up to date with existing and current innovations in transportation technology, so we can stay ahead of the curve as fulfilling the needs of our riders and our community while making sure that our technology stays current and is we're prepared for the future. And so that's part of our strategy for what we call ACEs, to invest in autonomous, connected, electric, and shared transportation technologies. And so prior to autonomous technology, the autonomous vehicle demonstrations that we've been operating, we've invested in connected vehicle technologies like our real-time information systems, opening apps like the Transit app. You can see how many minutes it takes for the bus to get to your stop location. We've also invested in electric vehicle technologies. So we currently have a fleet of 6, about to be 8, all electric buses on the roads and on our bus routes in Pinellas County. We also have several shared use mobility programs with transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft, such as our First Last Mile program, where we subsidize rides to or from certain bus stop locations. And now we can say that we have invested in testing autonomous vehicle technology on public roadways in Pinellas County. So when we talk about automation in general, the industry's come up with a 5-point scale to define how automated a project or a vehicle is. On a scale from 0 being no automation, so that's just, a bus driver driving a bus or somebody driving their car, all the way to level 5, full automation, needs no human intervention whatsoever. And so what we have been testing, and what a lot of the transportation industry across modes, whether it's transit or freight or transportation network companies like Uber have been testing, has been level 4 or high automation. So that basically means that the vehicles that we're testing can perform all driving functions, but just under certain conditions, which is why we have to be judicious about where we deploy these vehicle technologies for the moment. So these are the sorts of vehicles that we have been deploying in our program about over the last year. So far we've deployed two different low-speed, all-electric autonomous shuttles on public roadways in Pinellas County. So last year, we deployed, starting in November, a shuttle created by a company called Navia. That shuttle shown at the top with me very excitedly standing in front of it. I always get excited with these sorts of vehicles. Apart from technology, I'm always happy if I personally can fit in the vehicle, because you can't tell on Zoom, but I'm actually 6'6". So if I'm able to stand in the vehicle, it makes me very happy, and usually like to demonstrate that. But in any case, so we operated that one in St. Petersburg. And once we moved to northern Pinellas County, we switched to the vehicle shown on the bottom, which were the Ollie vehicles. But each vehicle has their nuanced differences, but a lot of their operating characteristics are the same. For instance, they are both, low speed, all electric shuttles. They generally don't go much faster than 10 to 15 miles per hour. Both can operate for about 7 to 9 hours on a charge before they need to go back and be recharged again. And both employ a variety of sensors such as LiDAR, cameras, and GPS technology that allow the shuttles to operate autonomously and detect obstacles in the roadway. So a little bit about just what we've done with AVA so far. So we first started the AVA program along Bayshore Drive in downtown St. Petersburg, right along the waterfront, just south of the Noy Hotel on the north end, where the Cross Bay Ferry stops in St. Petersburg, down to the Dali Museum, the Happy Theater area, on a route that was about a mile long. So we were able to operate there for a little over 4 months, starting from last November to the end of March. Initially, that demonstration was supposed to be a 3-month demonstration, but the city and PSTA saw an opportunity to extend that demonstration when the Grand Prix would move from March to April, and so we were actually able to extend it a little while longer. And while we were in St. Petersburg, we provided about 5,000 trips to riders along that mile route, which turned out to about an average about 63 people per day. And then following the operation in St. Petersburg, we then went over to Dunedin, where we were able to operate for just over a month. And in that month, we provided over 2,000 rides, and we actually averaged a higher ridership of 85 people per day. And both of these deployments have actually been the highest ridership routes that have been deployed by our service provider, Beep, who's operated all of these demonstrations for us on our behalf. And so the company Beep operates these demonstrations in other locations throughout the country. They operate on Marion Transitway in downtown Tampa. They operate in Orlando, in Peoria, Arizona, among other locations. And so from a ridership per day perspective, the demonstrations we've had here on Pinellas County have actually been the highest. So we're very pleased to see that the community has been accepting this technology and wanted to come out and try it out and experience it firsthand. So here's just a more detailed description of the route in St. Petersburg. So again, we went up and down Bayshore Boulevard in downtown St. Petersburg, utilizing existing PSTA bus stops. So on the north end, we had a stop that served the Cross Bay Ferry, 2 stops that served the pier, and 1 stop at the south end near the Mahaffey and Dali Theater. So we utilized two Navia shuttles along this route. So each shuttle did have a attendant, or as we like to call them, co-pilots, for customer safety, to answer any questions about the technology, and if needed, take over manual control of the vehicle. And so this was a fare-free service that operated 5 days a week, Wednesday through Sunday, from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And this portion of the demonstration in St. Petersburg was funded through a commuter assistance program grant from the Florida Department of Transportation, and matching funds were provided from PSTA. And something that we were able to do while we were deployed in St. Petersburg is we had an ADA day back in January. And so we chose a day, I believe it was a Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, when the shuttle was not in operation. And so we wanted a day that was specifically designated to showcasing how the shuttles are able to accommodate people with disabilities, particularly those who are utilizing mobility devices. So pictured here is just the shuttle stop along the route with our Transit Riders Advisory Committee Chair, Gloria Levitt-Corrigan, utilizing the ramps that the shuttles have for her to get on and off of the shuttle. So the ramps on these shuttles are manually deployed, although I believe in some other locations they're currently testing what an automated ramp system might look like. But for the moment, the ramps on board are manually deployed. But this is a really good opportunity for us to invite individuals from the Pinellas County disability advocacy community to come out and experience the shuttle firsthand and provide their feedback. So following the demonstration in St. Petersburg, we went off to Dunedin. So we actually had a procurement back in March and April, and in order to choose the vendor that would continue the demonstration program, since we were in partnership, of course, with TBARTA to utilize some of their federal funding to pay for half of the operations for the demonstration. And so we went off to bid, and Beep was ultimately selected to continue the demonstration in Northern Pinellas County. So back in May, we were able to start the demonstration in Dunedin. Again, it was very similar to St. Petersburg. There were 2 shuttles that were deployed with a co-pilot on board, and we operated 2 different routes. So one pictured on the bottom left was along Douglas Avenue that was served towards the end of spring training since that Dunedin is the spring training home of the Toronto Blue Jays. And then we were able to switch over to a route on that served Main Street, shown on the bottom right. And the service schedule here was pretty much the same as we operated in St. Petersburg, 5 days a week, Wednesday through Sunday from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And we continued to provide that fare-free service for that demonstration. And next up, so we are looking sometime this fall, perhaps as early as November, to take Ava to Clearwater Beach. So shown here is the route proposal that we have been in talks with the city of Clearwater to deploy that would go up and down Gulfview Boulevard, starting just south of the roundabout adjacent to Pier 60, and going down Gulfview, utilizing existing PSTA bus stops, and turning around and proceeding back northward just shy of the bridge that goes over to Sand Key. So we're really looking forward to being able to continue the program and bring Ava to Clearwater Beach. And so following the deployment at Clearwater Beach, we're currently reviewing deployment options in 2022 once we are done in Clearwater Beach. I know some cities in Pinellas County have expressed interest in Ava coming there next. So there may be an opportunity for us to keep the demonstration going and go to another location. And all these demonstrations we've collected, we're collecting various data points. So, we're collecting operational data about, how long does the charge on the vehicles last? How do the sensors react to the environment and things of that nature. But we've also, in St. Petersburg, we were able to actually have a survey of the riders who rode the demonstration service to be able to get their feedback and their perception of the technology. So all of the data that we are collecting from this program now will ultimately be able to inform future deployments of autonomous vehicle technology, whether that's future deployments of a service that's similar to the Ava vehicle, or alternatively, something that we are looking at and the industry is looking at is what does this technology actually look like on fixed route buses? So the regular buses that are 35, 40 feet long that are actually on public roads that are carrying the bulk of our ridership. So I don't think that's necessarily going to happen tomorrow, 2 years from now, or even 5 years from now, but it's something that we know is likely going to be coming into the future. So being able to test the technology with smaller vehicles now will really help us to inform our long-term deployment strategy, and also just an opportunity to demonstrate this to the community so they can actually see it, feel it, ride it, be exposed to it firsthand as we progress to larger vehicles in the future. So we've looked at a couple of potential future use cases if we were to, maybe in the next few years, try out a fully autonomous fixed route bus. So this could be anything from the bus just operating in our bus yard. So, for example, the bus would come back to PSTA headquarters after a long day of serving riders in the community, and then would be manually driven out in the field, but then could come back into the bus yard and then go operate autonomously between the bus wash and having the fare box be emptied out and be able to operate just in the bus yard for mechanical needs autonomously. We also have a couple other projects that it could perhaps align with. So we have a bus on shoulders project on I-275, where we have an express route the 100X that actually goes into the shoulder if the traffic speeds fall below 35 miles per hour. So we've talked about that as potential fruit use case for autonomous vehicle technology. We are also in the next year getting ready to deploy the Sunrunner bus rapid transit project along the Central Avenue corridor connecting downtown St. Petersburg to St. Pete Beach. So we've perhaps talked about the technology maybe sometime in the future of utilizing those business access and transit lanes to be able to operate autonomously there. And we could also maybe see the continuation of services that utilize the exact AVA vehicle, whether it's through downtown neighborhood circulation or other first last mile uses. But either way, I'm really excited to continue the AVA program and really appreciate TBARTA's support in being able to make it happen. And we as an agency are really excited to see where we can take this technology next. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions any of you may have.
All right. Thank you, Jacob. Very interesting. Are there questions from the committee? I have a few, but I'll save them. Questions from the committee.
With Karen and Rick Richmond, Karen Mullins and Rick Richmond.
Karen, go ahead.
Thanks, Bill. Thank you, Jacob. That was a great presentation. What revenue streams are we using to continue this experiment?
So I believe, so TBARTA has some federal funding. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, is it your 5307 funding?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
Yes. So 50% of it currently is being used from TBARTA's 5307 funds, and the remaining 50% currently being used from PSTA's capital reserves.
Okay.
Rick is
Rick
next.
Richmond.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Jacob, good presentation as well. Appreciate that. I'm curious, as a Hillsborough County resident, and they have a very similar program with the same vendor. You had indicated that as well. Is there any information sharing between the two agencies on their findings? Maybe you get a bigger data pool or data set to draw conclusions from?
Yeah, so I know we've initially had some conversations with HART. I believe they sent some data on their program over maybe sometime in the last year. So we haven't had that conversation for a while, but I think in the near future, that's probably something that we should resume so we can sort of, as a region, kind of explore the, the different successes our programs have had and, compare notes as we, as a region, invest in this technology more.
Great. No, appreciate it. Thank you.
So, Jacob, my question is, I got a couple of questions. One, did these shuttles run in mixed traffic? Number two, what was the cost to run each one of these experiments? And if these are what I'll call prototype vehicles, do you think this is the type and size of vehicle that you would be looking at going forward? What do you think?
Let's see. Okay. Answer to your first question, yes, they do operate in mixed traffic. Second question, so these demonstrations, for a 3-month demonstration, the cost is approximately $180,000 for the entire demonstration. So that's pretty much everything from the leasing of the vehicles, paying for the attendants to staff them that our contractor Beep hires to staff them. So yeah, so roughly $180,000 for 3 months for 2 shuttles. And the third question, so I would say the use of these vehicles, ultimately, most of our service area is obviously comprised of the 35, 40-foot buses. So I would say in the long term, we would probably be interested in exploring how technology would work on a larger vehicle. That being said, I think we as an agency can look and see how these different demonstrations perform, and if there may be an opportunity to look at using this type of vehicle in particular situations for maybe some of those like shorter trips within maybe downtown areas or just for first mile trips in general.
And what is the capacity of the vehicles?
So they are about, the Navia shuttle could hold up to 10 people and the Ollie could hold up to 8. We did previously have social distancing measures for each demonstration just because of COVID-19. So I think so that did reduce the capacity by anywhere from 20 to 40% because we would, board people by party size, and they would go to different parts of the shuttle just depending on capacity and who was already on board. But yeah, in non-COVID times, you have usually about 8 to 10 people.
Okay.
And there's usually 2 seats that fold up to accommodate mobility devices.
Okay. Are there other questions from committee members?
Karen Mullins.
Karen?
Sorry, Bill, this is just a follow-up. Jacob, do we have any data on any mishaps that have occurred with these vehicles?
Yes. So I know there was in St. Petersburg, I believe there was a minor incident that was involving a rider. I think that's just, like the door, what do you call it? I can't think of the term, but the thing that I guess the hinge on the door, I think was kind of lightly touched the person's skin, but it was like a very minor incident. And in Dunedin at the end of June, we did have an incident that involved a pedestrian, but that was while the vehicle was operating in manual mode. So as a result, we did suspend operations in Dunedin while we conducted an investigation of that. So our safety and security team on that particular incident has been working closely with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and we've just about concluded that investigation, and they've pretty much given us the go-ahead to resume.
Anything else, Karen? Okay. Any other questions?
Brian Pissarro.
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, Jacob, I just want to ask, is the vehicle in autonomous mode when it goes through intersections?
So typically when it goes through intersections, the way it has been handled from my understanding is, so it'll stop at the intersection, and there's typically a button that the attendant will press in order for the shuttle to proceed through the intersection. I think in certain intersections, there may have been sometimes, when the shuttle was operated manually under limited circumstances, but generally it does operate autonomously, but it has to have that validation by the co-pilot.
Thanks.
So Jacob, you've indicated that there's a proposed Clearwater Beach route for the fall. So I guess that's the next step. Are there any other plans to implement this service or further test it throughout the county?
Yeah, so I know a few cities have expressed interest. I know I think there's been some light conversations with both it returning to St. Petersburg as well as maybe it going to Largo. In St. Petersburg, we've had a little bit more conversation about it potentially serving the Deuces corridor on 22nd Street, connecting, the Sunrunner Central Avenue corridor down into the neighborhood near SBC Midtown. I know one challenge with that particular route is that corridor is actually about to be under construction to be what's called a festival street, where I think they're going to kind of level out the street and make it more able to handle events like festivals and whatnot. So we would love to deploy there in St. Petersburg, but I know timing could be an issue, so we probably wouldn't be able to go there right after Clearwater Beach. But yes, we definitely are looking to continuing the program once we're done in Clearwater.
Okay. So I would assume then from those remarks that there's no current plan to implement this service on a somewhat semi-permanent basis. Is that right?
Not at this time. Typically, the demonstrations have lasted just a few months. That might change in the future if we were to find additional funding streams. But at the moment, we're just demonstrating this service on a short-term basis.
Okay.
Okay,
sure. Are there other questions from the committee? Well, thank you very much. This was very interesting. I'm particularly interested in the program, and like Rick Richmond, I would like to see the sharing of the data between the two counties since these programs have now run their course in at least a couple of areas. Jacob, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Okay. The next item on our agenda, we'll move into to new business and committee discussion. Under members' interest, which is a place where we can bring up topics that we might like to see on a future agenda. Does anyone have something they'd like to bring before the committee for consideration on a future agenda item? And then, Bob, I'll come back to your comments on Commissioner Kemp. I don't see hands, so I assume there are no others. Bob, did you want to make any further comments regarding Commissioner Kemp's?
Excuse me, I just see Bill Johnson raising his hand.
Oh, excuse me, Bill, please go ahead.
Thank you. Just want to check that you can hear me.
Yes.
I'm wondering if there's other opportunities for TBARTA to deploy service improvements in the short term. The one that we have right now is the carpool, van pool services. And everything else we're doing seems like it's such a long-term out, and I'm wondering if we could brainstorm and come up with some way that TBARTA could add some additional value in the short term, or perhaps it's providing some additional services through the van pools. And that could be a future if there's interest from somebody else.
Okay. I'll ask Chris and Brian to look into that, and we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
I'll make a quick comment on that. I would tell you that the TD Tampa Bay program was probably the best example of something that we were immediately providing. It's disappointing, and the budget money got caught up in the MCOR's discussion. But that is the one program we spent a significant amount of energy on. We launched it. It was successful. It was growing every month. Would love to, at most near term, we certainly can have the discussion, but any way to get that back on track, especially with the legislature. And of course, Ron Pierce and our lobbyists and our team are working on those types of things. So it's not like nothing is happening. And I think Brian would be open to conversations on other things we can do, but I felt TD Tampa Bay was a real good example of something that was happening, not just something we could do, but something that we actually were doing. And unfortunately, it all comes down to funding. So I'm sure Brian and I are happy to take a look at that for future agenda items, but that would be on the top of my list, is to get that going again.
Just to kind of reiterate what Chris mentioned, it always comes back to the same thing with our funding. We're limited in the funds that we have that give us flexibility that we could use to fund service. I mean, it pretty much, the FTA 5307 money is pretty much the only source of money we have that we could use for service. I'll give you an example of something that we've been looking into. It hasn't gone anywhere yet, but we've been in conversations with Tampa Innovation, which is over in the USF area, because they're trying to get an Uptown or Shuttle going. Hillsborough County has put money into it. The local partners within Tampa Innovation have put money into it, and we've put it out there that we'd be interested in trying to help if we can. This has to, however, the other partner in this is Hart, and whether or not Hart wants to be part of it is kind of like is something we're waiting to find out. But we are looking for opportunities where we can bring value to the region.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Bob Whitmore has his hand raised.
Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to echo what Chris said before he came out. I was very interested in that TD program only because it looked like it was such a fast starter and a good starter. And while Bill had made the recommendation to the TBARTA group, I think in the August timeframe, I hadn't heard anything, and I said, "Come on, this was a good program. How come somebody can't find the money someplace?" So that's my comments there.
Thank you, Bob.
Josh Frank has his hand raised.
Josh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to sort of, Brian, what you said I thought was very interesting, and I think, as was mentioned, the budgetary issues are something that we're going to have to deal with for the foreseeable future, I think. And a lot of what I've, in my professional career, been talking to communities and cities about in times where there may not be adequate funding for physical projects or operating projects, that it's a really low cost, high return on investment move to perhaps start working on more tactical urbanism style projects that are low in cost, but can return a lot in terms of education, marketing, branding, that sort of thing. So for example, regionally thinking about maybe temporary trail connections using paint to do road diets or new crosswalks, or testing out certain modes, as was shown in the previous example. So anything that can be done with a lot less money and perhaps temporarily, I think is something that maybe we could start to look towards in times where we may not have the funding to get something up and running off the ground.
Good. Thanks, Josh. Any other comments? I don't see any other hands. Yeah, let's keep this concept in front of us for future meetings. Next item on our agenda is the RRT study with a locally preferred alternative. Brian?
All right, I'm gonna share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, see if I can go to, trying to go to slideshow here. Okay. Okay. So thank you, Mr. Chair. At the August board meeting, the board finally selected a locally preferred alternative. Praise the Lord. There were 4 alternatives presented. I'm going to kind of go over them with you, and then I'm going to talk about what the board finally opted for with the locally preferred alternative. But the 4 alternatives that you see here, these were what were presented in August. 6A, starting with the one on the far left, alternative 6A, that had 6 stations. The bus would under 6A, the bus would be in mixed traffic from Pasco to the Howard Franklin Bridge, and then in express lanes from the bridge to downtown St. Pete. Alternatives 8A to 8C each had 9 stations, 4 in Pinellas, 3 in Hillsborough, and 2 in Pasco. In 8A, the bus would be in express lanes from downtown St. Pete to downtown Tampa, and in dedicated freeway BRT lanes from downtown Tampa to Pasco. Alternative 8B was the same as alternative 8A, except for that portion from downtown St. Pete to Gateway. In 8B, the bus would be in dedicated freeway BRT lanes in that segment. And then finally, 8C, the bus would be in mixed traffic from Pasco County to Bears Avenue, and then in dedicated freeway BRT lanes from Bears to downtown Tampa, in mixed traffic from downtown Tampa to West Shore, in express lanes across the Howard Franklin Bridge to the Gateway, and then in dedicated freeway BRT lanes from the Gateway to downtown St. Pete. 8C was the staff recommendation. However, the board did not select any of these alternatives. Instead, what they opted to do was they voted to tweak alternative 8C and add back in dedicated freeway BRT lanes north of Bears. So this is the locally preferred alternative. So you can see from Pasco County to downtown Tampa, it will be in dedicated freeway BRT lanes. It will be in mixed traffic from downtown Tampa to West Shore, express lanes across the Howard Franklin Bridge to the Gateway, and then back in dedicated freeway BRT lanes into downtown St. Pete. Something I need to point out here, though, the Hillsborough TPO, they voted to remove from their tip the TB Next segment, I believe from Hillsborough Avenue to Bears Avenue. Unless that gets put back into the tip, this map you see here, at least that portion of the map is kind of a moot point, because the project costs to do those BRT lanes north of downtown Tampa would have to be borne by the BRT project instead of TB Next. So I just want to point that out. Now that we have an LPA, Scott and his team at WSP, they're focused on completing the environmental analysis. The next step is going to be getting what's called a class of action determination from the Federal Transit Administration. The class of action indicates the seriousness of potential environmental impacts and the required level of documentation. There's 3 different classes of action. There's what's called a categorical exclusion, an environmental assessment, and an environmental impact statement. A categorical exclusion, or CE, that's the lowest level. CEs are granted to projects that have no significant environmental impact. An environmental assessment is required if the project might cause significant environmental impacts, but it's not known. An environmental impact statement, that's required for projects where you know that there's going to be significant environmental impacts. Scott's team, they are preparing what's called a categorical exclusion checklist. We're going to submit that to FTA in October. We're going to make the case for a categorical exclusion and ask FTA to make a determination. It's not for certain that FTA will grant to it. It's not for certain that FTA will agree to it. They may come back and say that we need to do a modified categorical exclusion. They might require us to do an environmental assessment for that portion of the route from Bears up to Pasco County because it goes through a conservation area. So we'll have to wait and find out. But so that's where we're focused on now with the study.
Bill, you're muted.
Sorry. Questions, Brian, from the committee on the status of the RRT?
See Bob Widmer and Rick. Oh, lots. Bob Widmer, you get to call first.
Okay, Bob, go ahead.
The new decision with the West Shore interchange, does that affect 8C at all in your estimation?
I'm not sure what you mean by affecting 8C because the board didn't select 8C.
I know that, but the reason they didn't is they didn't want to mess with that route from downtown to West Shore and absorb all the costs of the interchange, et cetera. And now my understanding is that interchange is going to go forward in what, 2023 or something like that. Does that have any effect on the possibility of making 8C look more like 8B?
I don't think that, I mean, the announcement that this money's been put back into the work program will certainly accelerate the construction schedule. I don't see how this would change I don't see though how this would change the board's decision on the preferred LPA.
Okay.
Bill Johnson, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. You said that the Hillsborough TPO removed the BRT lanes north of, and I didn't catch the area that they were removed. Is it north of Barris or south of Barris?
I believe the segment of TB Next that was removed is from Hillsborough Avenue to Bears, which is typically, I believe it's referred to as TB Next segment 7.
Brian, I think it's MLK, not Hillsborough.
I'm sorry. Thank you for the correction, Josh. You're right. MLK.
Which is effectively from the junction north.
Oh, is it? Okay. On the printout of the agenda, on the locally preferred alternative, there's some dashed lines around the Carillon station that I don't see on the chart that you are showing now. Are those to mean something special, or?
I'd have to check with Scott, but I'm always positive those are still express lanes that would connect from the bridge to the Carillon.
Is that just to get out to the station?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bill. Rick Richmond, you recognize.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question revolves a little bit more around that segment 7. and you touched on it a little bit, Brian, I'm just curious from a project, if that's not funded, if that section isn't funded and no improvements, are we're way earlier on. So I'm just kind of trying to figure this out. Would that section then be in mixed traffic? Would TBARTA then maybe fund improvements? What does that look like?
Well, there's really only two scenarios. It would have to either be in mixed traffic, or the cost of constructing those lanes would have to be absorbed by the RRT project, because the assumption has been that those construction costs would be absorbed by TB Next. That's what is helping to make the project cost effective. If the cost for constructing those lanes from MLK to Bears had to be borne by the project, it may not be cost effective anymore. Putting all of that aside though, regardless of who constructs it, whether it's the RRT or TB Next, it's going to have to be reflected into TPO's TIP and LRTP. And if they don't go along with it, regardless of who funds it, it's a moot point.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to mention that too. Yeah. Because there's just such an incredible headwind in that area for any expansion or improvement through that segment, that even if we could fund it, TBARTA is going to face a huge amount of very uphill battle. So anyways, I appreciate that context. So thanks.
And I would just add briefly that there is an opportunity to put that funding back in the TIP for next June's approval. So
something else I wanted to point out, the segment from Bears up into Pasco, let me back up, so with 8C, you can see it was going to be mixed traffic, but the board opted, and specifically it was, oops, hold on. I'm sorry, just a second here. The board, and specifically it was Commissioner Starkey from Pasco, that wanted to see the dedicated BRT lanes added back in from Bears to Pasco. Well, the question still has not been answered. Well, who's going to pay for that? In terms of what I'm talking about in terms of the counties, because on the one hand, Pasco County is saying, if we're going to be asked to support this project, we want to get something out of it. We want to see dedicated BRT lanes up in the northern part. Okay, I hear that, but I can tell you the Hillsborough County Commission, and specifically Commissioner Kemp, is not going to want to pay Hillsborough County dollars for bus lanes from north of Bears to the county line. And so that's another thing we're going to have to work through, trying to come up with the methodology of what is each county's share. So we still got a ways, we still have some Gordian knots that we need to untie in this project, to put it mildly.
So Brian, has that additional cost been calculated yet?
The latest estimate from Scott of the capital cost for the LPA, the median cost is $150 million. That's total. That's total for the entire project.
If that includes that segment as proposed.
Right.
Okay. I'm sorry. Josh Frank, you've had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got two sort of thoughts or comments. Brian, maybe you can help me sort through them. I think as Rick had mentioned, the section between downtown Tampa and USF shown on this map being purple seems to be sort of one of the several Gordian knots, as you mentioned. And I'm curious, having known this going into selecting a locally preferred alternative, and having changed once again the four options that were on the table to something that was towards the board's intent, why had they not considered shading that blue and considering it operating in mixed traffic as the locally preferred alternative? Because it seems like should that funding not be in the TPO, that would at least align with the current conversation at Hillsborough County level, better align, I should say.
Right. I mean, it's an excellent point. And let me back up the slide. So as I mentioned, when we when staff presented this to the board, we said that 8C was the preferred alternative because, when we had our one-on-one meetings with Commissioner Kemp, two specific things that she mentioned to us was she objected to serving the West Shore station with a catwalk that went over the interstate.
Mhm.
So that is why you see that segment from West Shore to downtown Tampa in light blue mixed traffic, because if you're going to rule out a median station at West Shore, because of the ingress and egress points of the express lanes, the only way we could serve West Shore station would be to operate in mixed traffic and leave the interstate. So that addressed one of Commissioner Kemp's objections. Her other objection that she told us was she did not see a need for dedicated BRT lanes north of Bears. She specifically said north of Bears. So we took that into consideration. So that's kind of how we got to 8C. 8C was the alternative that we presented that we felt as best as possible addressed her concerns. But then when we pointed this out, at the August board meeting,
Right.
The board decided, no, we want dedicated lanes north of Bears. Now, and also I need to point out that Commissioner Kemp was not at the August board meeting.
Right. And I'm really speaking between the USF area station and the downtown Tampa station, because there seems to be a dissonance, to put it kindly, between all of the interested parties. And one of the compromises that I understand, the compromise for adding the freeway BRT lanes north of Bears, but in that same spirit, it would make sense to me, at least, that there be, that segment from USF to downtown just be considered mixed traffic. And it would then fall in alignment with what the TPO currently prioritizes, as well as meet the commissioner from Pasco County's request and Commissioner Kemp's request for West Shore. So that to me just seemed like it would make more sense.
I think the logic behind leaving that segment from downtown Tampa to USF in purple is, I think what it comes down to is holding out hope that the TPO will change their mind and put it back in.
Right. And as Rick had mentioned, that seems like a very steep hill to climb.
Yeah. And the thing is, if it doesn't change, it's like I said, if the TPO doesn't, then this map, it's a moot point. It will have to be in mixed traffic.
So that was sort of my first point. We don't need to go back and forth on it anymore. I think I've kind of got my answer. The other point that I had that I was curious is, we've talked at a couple times, at least I have, in terms of my comments to Scott and the board, in so far as using the BRT lanes in downtown St. Petersburg. I'm glad to see that exists, operating in the BAT lane on Central Avenue, the Sunrunner. But I'm wondering, if again that segment between downtown and USF is such a thorn, why has the BRT lanes that are being studied for Florida Ave and Bougainvillea and Nebraska Avenue been considered? Because that infrastructure is going to be built, assumingly everything goes to plan, that this could also run in that and have all of the associated benefits of actually being surface level transit throughout the urban core. I've mentioned that before, but I still think that that's a huge missed opportunity.
Let me make sure I understand the question or comment. Are you asking why are we not looking at using the arterial street in that segment?
Yes, because that lane would be dedicated and under the BRT plan that's being proposed right now with Hart.
Yeah. Well,
so you could punt on this segment entirely, is what I'm getting at.
I guess my response would be, we've been trying to state to Commissioner Kemp that this route is not competing against the Hart arterial BRT, that these routes serve two different purposes. If we were to leave the interstate and go down Florida Avenue, which is the same route that the Hart BRT is going to be using, it becomes even harder to make that case. So,
I'm I recognize that. I still think as a regional route, its role is more supplementary than replacing. And so I think that actually enhances your argument as calling it a complement to local service by having a local and regional connection literally at the exact same bus stop 2 or 3 times along the same route. So I don't mean to take so much time, and I appreciate the chair's leniency towards giving me so much time. So
I mean, these are
I'll
all
shut up
really,
and let some other people ask some questions.
yeah, I mean, these are all valid points. I'm enjoying this discussion. I think something else we need to keep in mind though is even if there's going to be a BRT lane, and we know with things like TSP, it's still an arterial. And if the focus of the RRT is regional service, and look, if you look at the map, we don't even have any stops between the USF and downtown area. If I just want to get from that point to the other point, why would I want to be on an arterial with traffic lights when I could be in a highway BRT lane with no stops in between? So but yeah, these are all good points.
Thanks, Brett, Josh, and Brian. Karen Schwartz, recognize.
Okay, I'm trying to contain my thoughts here. For one thing, not being familiar with Pasco or Hillsborough County, can somebody tell me where theirs is?
Yeah, if you can see my cursor, it's about roughly here.
Oh, so it's just north of USF.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's my other thing. It sounds like there's a lot of pushback from Hillsborough County. We're going to put it here. Where this regional route will go. From my perspective, I really want to be able to take a bus from downtown St. Pete to the airport. That's my goal in all of this. It would be nice to go to downtown Tampa too. Is there any thought to, because there is so much pushback, maybe we'll just go from downtown St. Pete to downtown Tampa and call it a day, and then worry about the rest of the route?
Have you been talking to Scott Pringle?
No, it's just my thought. I'm thinking for me.
I mean,
now, granted, if I could get up to wherever that is up there, SD 54, I might be interested, but right now, I just want to get to the airport. So anyway, is there how will this thing be constructed? Where is it going to start? Is it going to start in the middle? Is it going to come up through Pinellas first? What are we thinking?
Well, the project is tied to the TB Next schedule. So we kind of have to dovetail off of that. And so we've got the bridge being constructed, and now money has come in for the segment from West Shore to downtown Tampa and the I-275, I-4 interchange. So that being said, it's possible that maybe the first phase that we do is a St. Pete to downtown Tampa segment. You won't have the dedicated BRT lanes in Pinellas just yet, but you do have bustle and shoulder operations today on that part of 275. So,
yeah.
So it could, I don't know. The short answer is I don't know what the final phasing is going to be today. It's possible that a St. Pete to downtown Tampa segment ends up being the first phase, where in the short term, we use bustle and shoulder in that area in Pinellas where you see the purple. The express lanes will be constructed when the bridge is finished.
Right.
And then it will be in mixed traffic in West Shore to downtown Tampa. Maybe that's how it starts. But we still don't have a project until the counties agree to fund it. The project goes nowhere without local funding.
Here we are arguing about how from downtown Tampa, all the way for the longest part of this thing, we're arguing over how to do that when the other part just seems like a no-brainer and does have support, I think. Am I right?
I mean, I think the project certainly has support from the TBARTA board members representing Pinellas and Pasco.
Mhm. Okay. Well, I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm going to continue to figure out how to get to the airport without that fast bus, but it sure would be nice. Just would really be nice.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Other questions from
Karen
the
Mullins.
committee?
Karen Mullins is waving her hand.
Karen, go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Bill. My question about the funding for the junction up to USF or from USF, that area not being on the TIP. I'm wondering if it was in effect an issue because there wasn't any funding for the West Shore interchange, which today now has miracle funding. That's water under the bridge. I understand that. I just don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater if we've got arterials, and yeah, we have to drive the issue home that this is a separate entity. But if those arterials are available to us in that corridor, let's use them. I would hate to lose this whole thing just because we have one person who thinks it should be done this way and we're not able to compromise at some point. I know we don't like the compromise. It's not an ideal compromise, but we see this whole thing falling apart, except for what Karen just mentioned. We want that trip to the airport from Pinellas, for God's sake. But don't throw the whole thing out just because we're thinking one way. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does to me. Bob Henyon, you have a comment?
Yeah, I agree with what Karen Schwartz wants. And it makes a lot of sense to do that as step A1. But we have to be careful too that we think regionally and that we don't sidestep the people who are in the northern or southern realms of our kingdom here. Here endeth the blessing.
Thank you, Bob. Josh Frank, you have a further comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing. I think part of, I just wanted to sort of clarify too, as part of what my comments will be, is that I think the operating in mixed traffic part versus operating in a dedicated lane on the interstate, part of my fear, and I just want to repeat this, I said it last meeting, but I want to say it again, is that if this project does get built, those freeway lanes get built, and the transit element ends up failing because of low ridership or unsustainable, maintenance costs or whatever, those lanes now have the risk of being returned back to DOT for general traffic, which then de facto expands the interstate, which is something the urban core in Hillsborough County has been very against for the past decade now, if not short of a decade. So that's part of the overall concern that I know of, at least between USF and downtown. So just keep that in mind. And then for the part that's now in mixed traffic to West Shore, again, that transit envelope that exists there has been hard fought for. And so again, if it were to be eventually turned over towards general traffic, that would be something that would, I think, be pretty devastating for the entire region. So thank you.
Thank you, Josh. And I would just like to echo that last comment of Josh's, that transit envelope between downtown and West Shore, which is a potential feeder directly to the airport, needs to be preserved for transit at almost any cost. I've felt all along that one segment probably should be the last segment that would be in mixed traffic given the connectivity between the airport, West Shore, and downtown, but I've expressed that view previously. Are there any more questions or comments regarding the RRT? Karen, go ahead.
Okay, Brian wanted to jump in on.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the comment Josh made about the fear that that dedicated BRT lane could at some point down the road be converted to a general purpose lane. There is a rule that if you use federal dollars to, say, construct a carpool lane, if you were to convert that to a general purpose lane later on, the federal government's going to want their money back. The same rule would apply here. If you're telling the federal government you're constructing this as a dedicated bus lane, you can't just go you just can't go and change that to a general purpose lane without financial consequences. FHWA is going, okay, if you want to do that, we want our money back because you said that you were going to use it for this and now you're using it for that.
And I think FDOT might take that deal.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Karen,
I was just going to make a point on the surface BRT that Hart's doing, that they'll probably be using intellectual technology to move those buses through those intersections. And that's something we can do as well. So yeah, we're on the ground and we're in mixed use traffic, but we should be able to control the lights going through there so we're not slowed down with regular traffic.
I agree, and that could be a key to expediting that traffic. It doesn't address Brian's concern about Commissioner Kemp's concern, but it certainly is a technological way to solve the problem. Bob Whitmer.
Yeah, I think we're discussing here with one hand behind our back because there's no Pasco representative, as far as I can tell, on this call. And it was clearly Commissioner Starkey and Cliff Manuel who changed the opinion of the TBARTA board to make that BRT lanes and not mixed traffic. And I think if you're going to start arguing from one county to another, we got people that aren't on this call that should be there, and it should be left the way the TBARTA people said it should be.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Any other comments?
Yeah, 2 million is 2 million is 2 million. And that was the bargaining chip. You know, how does she go back to her constituents and say, we're spending this much money for it when it's going to actually help her people get to work? So.
Right. Yeah, that was the argument.
Where do
Okay,
we
well,
go,
Brian.
where do we
Yes,
go from here, Mr. Chairman?
Bill Johnson, go ahead.
Where do we go from here? We've had a robust discussion. I'm unsure as to where we go from here.
I think Brian outlined that originally. There are some next steps. Brian, you want to address that?
Right, just to repeat, what the next steps are going to be is Scott and the team at WSP are going to be focused on completing the environmental analysis for the LPA. In October, we're going to be seeking what's called a class of action determination from FTA, where they tell us what level of environmental screening we have to do for the project.
And I think in the meantime, it's fair to say that the conversation will go on at several different locations regarding the section of the RRT north of downtown Tampa up to Barris, and how that may or may not fold into Tampa Bay next. Well, Brian, thanks a lot. Good update, great map, and I think it helped everyone understand the current status. I think you're up next also. Yep. On the US 19 RRT study.
Yeah, RRT, but different corridor.
Yeah.
At the last CAC meeting, we had some discussion about this study, and I just wanted to circle back and address 2 points that were made by Josh and Dave Goodwin, namely that the study limits should be extended south to downtown St. Pete, and second, that the CAC was not given a chance to provide input on the scope of work for the study. I want to make it abundantly clear. We absolutely want the CAC's input on studies that TBARTA undertakes. Unfortunately, what happened with this study is normally we would have brought this to the CAC for comment, but the August board meeting was moved up before the CAC meeting. And that was done because we had to do that because that was the only date we knew for sure that we were going to have a quorum. As I'm sure many of you know, the TBARTA board we've had a lot of problems the past several months getting quorums at our meeting, and we can't get any action done. And we had several important items that we needed to get approved at the August board meeting, including this US 19 RRT study. And we didn't want to risk putting it off to December, not knowing if we would have a quorum in December. But I just want to make it clear, we do want the CAC's comments on studies we undertake. And going forward in the future, we will make sure that we bring these scopes of work to you for your review and comment. The second point I want to address also about extending the study limit south to downtown St. Pete. After the CAC meeting, I did reach out to Whit Blanton at Ford Pinellas and to Cassandra Borchers at Psta just to get their inputs. And I said, guys, am I missing something here? Because I've got CAC members saying this was a missed opportunity, that we should have extended the study further south. And the feedback that I got from both of them was that they're both comfortable with the project limits as is. In other words, that the southern terminus of the study goes to the Gateway Intermodal Center. For example, one of the things Whit told me is that in his conversations with people from St. Pete, what people from St. Pete are interested in is a better connection to TPA in downtown Tampa, not so much north into Pasco. And if you look at it the other direction, coming from north to south, if someone's coming from Pasco, if there's someone from Pasco that wants to get to downtown St. Pete, it actually would make better sense for that person to go to the Gateway Intermodal Center and make a connection to the 275 RRT, which is going to be operating in express lanes to downtown Tampa, instead of staying on 19 on an arterial street. Anyway, that's just my long-winded way of saying, I really do take your comments seriously. I reached out to staff at our partner agencies just to make sure I'm not missing anything. And we do feel comfortable leaving the study limits as is.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Any questions from the committee on that update? Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you circling back.
Bob Henning had his hand raised.
Yeah,
Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, this is related to the issue of quorum on the board. And we had talked about it before, and there had been movement to allow the mayors, St. Pete and Tampa, to have alternates. I'm not sure if that was followed through and they actually filled those spots or not. But that's something that we can push for having done to assure that we have a quorum. We can't do anything about the governor not filling his 2 spots. But about the mayors, we can push on that.
Mr. Chairman, I can give you an update on that.
Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I do know that Mayor Kreisman has already inquired about appointing an alternate, and I think that might be the case at the next meeting. I've not heard anything from Mayor Castor's office, but both the mayors are aware that they have that ability based on the legislative action that was taken in the past session. So that's moving forward.
Well, it's very important because if we have 2 governor's appointments that have not been filled and yet have to be counted toward the quorum, that we can't rectify, but we can rectify the mayor's alternates and push them to get that done.
Thank you, Bob. Anything else for Karen Mullins? Go ahead.
yeah, I just wanted to say for the information that got to the board without the CAC technically seeing it, is there any way in the future, if something like this happens again, which it probably will, that the CAC gets an email with the packet information so that we're able to comment to the folks that represent us on the board?
Chris, you want to handle that one?
I defer to Jennifer on what our procedures would be about that type of thing.
Regarding us sending you information about a board meeting?
On a particular item that wasn't presented to the CAC, but was presented to the board.
I think Jennifer, she's speaking specifically about action items scheduled for a board meeting that have not come before the CAC. Is that fair, Karen? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I would have to defer to David about that. I'm not sure how he would handle that, but we do put out every board meeting packet and agenda 1 week prior to the meeting. So you always have the option to go there and review it. And if there's something you would like to speak out with, always you can come and do public comment.
Well, and I think it's a fair question. So maybe we can discuss it a little bit offline as to whether or not there's some simple trigger mechanism for action items before the board that have not come before the CAC. And Brian, I appreciate your earlier comments about, wanting input. This is an active group, so they're going to want to look at these things. All right. Brian, the next slide.
I think it's
I'm
Josh
sorry.
Wright, right?
Josh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to thank Brian for doing that due diligence. Most of those comments came from me, so I feel responsible for having to give him more work. So I just want to thank him for that. And even though I may disagree with Whit, we agree on a lot of other things, especially baseball related. So we'll get along. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome, Josh.
All right. The next item on our agenda is the TBARTA bylaws update. Brian, go ahead.
It's Brian Day. All right, let me share
Yeah.
my screen again. Thought I'd just go over with the committee some of the changes that were made to TBARTA's bylaws last month, because there's one change that has impacts on the CAC. But I just thought I'd go through them. One of them we kind of already touched on a little bit. Article 3, membership of the board, paragraph 2. The old language used to say that the mayors of the 2 largest municipalities. Now it says the mayors are the mayor's designated alternate. And it also says each mayor's designated alternate must be an elected member of the municipality city council and approved as the mayor's designated alternate by the municipality city council. In the event the mayor is unable to attend the meeting, the mayor's designated alternate shall attend the meeting on the mayor's behalf and has the full right to vote. So that was the first change that was made. The second one was under Article 4, voting. It used to say that 7 members of the board shall constitute a quorum and that the vote of 7 members is necessary for any action to be taken by the board. That number 7 is based on the fact that we have a 13-member board. We still the new language says a simple majority of the board shall constitute a quorum and a simple majority of the voting members present shall be necessary for any action taken by the board. We still need 7 voting members physically present to take action. The difference is now they can pass a vote and it can be, say, for example, 4-3. Whereas under the old language, Alan Zimmett, who's our attorney, he was of the opinion that you needed 7 members present and the vote had to be 7-0. So this text change clarifies that. The next change under Article 7, committees, paragraph B, Citizens Advisory Committee. It used to say the Citizens Advisory Committee shall be comprised of 19 citizens. Each member of the board shall appoint a voting member in each of the 6 metropolitan planning organizations that have membership in the TBARTA MPO's CCC or Chairs Coordinating Committee shall appoint a voting member. The new text reads, the Citizens Advisory Committee shall be comprised of 18 citizens, and each member of the board shall appoint a voting member in each of the 5 metropolitan organizations that are within TBARTA's 5-county service area shall appoint a voting member. We made this text change because of the fact that the Chairs Coordinating Committee is no longer part of TBARTA. And we also made it because of a request that we got from the Polk County TPO. They asked us to remove the requirement that someone from Polk County serve on the CAC. It was difficult for them to find someone that was willing to serve on the committee of an agency that does not represent Polk County. So we made that change. And then the final change was, you see here, paragraph C, that used to be the section where the chair's coordinating committee was referenced. That is now gone. So those were the changes that were made to the bylaws.
All right. Any questions of Brian on the bylaw changes? Okay. And they're available if any of the committee members would like to have their own copy. I'm sure they can download them from the meeting packet. So thanks, Brian.
And next, before we get to for the next item, before you hand it over to Ken, is it okay if I just cue this up?
Sure.
So the next two items, the commuter services update and communications update. These two reports are they're now a standard part of our board agenda packet. There's no presentation given to the board, but we do include a report in the packet. And I had suggested to Bill that maybe this would be worthwhile as a standing item on our CAC meetings, that perhaps you might be interested in just getting an update on the highlights of what have we been doing in regards to commuter services? What have we been doing in regards to communications? Like, for example, have we given any interviews to the media? I've asked Chris and Ken to just kind of come in and just give highlights. Excuse me, my voice is cracking. If this is an item that you find value in, we can continue it and make it a standing item. If you get nothing out of it, we don't have to include it. I just thought we would give it a try. So with that, I guess I'd hand it over to Ken.
Ken, go ahead. Good to have
Thank you. I'll just have a very short report here. I thought I would give you the latest numbers from our van pool efforts. In the month of July, we were running 161 vans. 2 of the vans were non-reporting, which is pretty standard. That simply means that they were probably undergoing personnel changes. So 159 were running fully. And it might be of interest to you to know that 129 of those were headed to Hillsborough destinations, 15 to Pinellas, and 15 actually to Sumter County. And you might be wondering, what's in Sumter County? And that's Coleman Bureau of Prisons and Florida National Cemetery. So just to kind of give you an overview of the amount of CO2 that has been saved from the atmosphere, we calculate that there's been over 5 million pounds of CO2 that have been saved from January 1st this year. And July's savings represent over 634,000 pounds of CO2. I next want to just kind of give you a little bit of overview of commuter services. We work with employers directly, and I want to let you know about an employee commute survey that we run. And what it's really designed to do is to work with the employer and to find out what their concerns are and how we can help provide commuter services that solve problems for the employer, whether that be attracting and retaining employees, or whether they have green initiatives that they're trying to hit and targets, CO2 targets that they're trying to hit. That employee commute survey first establishes kind of what they're doing right now. And we come back with follow-up surveys to see how much we're moving the needle. Are we actually making an impact at that employer? If any of you have contacts with employers around the region, please, feel free to reach out to me. I can make that contact with them. We'd love to develop close relationships with all employers in the region. And then finally, I know Corinne Tucker isn't on this call today, unfortunately, but the two of us are actually now trained in bicycle helmet fittings. So if you have an event that could benefit from the distribution of bike helmets. Both Corinne and myself can actually fit those, and we can secure helmets through the Florida Department of Transportation. And really, in a nutshell, that's all I want to talk about today. Any questions?
Thank you, Ken. Coincidentally, you're probably aware that the Tampa Bay Partnership made a report just yesterday to the Hillsborough County TPO. If you haven't seen that study that Dave Sobrish presented, you might find it interesting, and it may give you some good tips.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Questions from the committee? Well, Ken, we appreciate that update. Good work.
Thank you.
My comment would be talk to building owners or
Yes, property management.
Yeah,
Yeah.
property management people, and maybe they can put together some commuter activity that would lessen the traffic on our roads. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. And the next one is Chris, you're going to give us a communications update.
Yeah, very briefly, I won't go over the data that you see in the packet there, but it's just designed to give you an overview of some of the outreach that we continue to do as we try to build a consensus, and we provide those same information to the board. I would call your attention, if you haven't listened to the On the Go podcast that we do, this is trying to further understanding of transportation initiatives, planning initiatives in our region, trying to build consensus as well. We had 2 episodes last month. We average about 1 a month. There's not a set schedule on that because it's hard with a small staff to maintain a set schedule. We have other things to do. But we did have a really good episode with Sean Sullivan of the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, talking about regionalism, of which obviously he's a big supporter of, and he had some really nice comments to make. And then we also were talking with PSTA on how they adopted flamingo fares. So a lot of episodes in there. If you have not checked it out, I encourage you to do so. You can get it on the TBARTA website, but also download it on podcast. The only other note I would make regards our board meeting next Friday, and this will be a little different. We're back in Hillsborough County. We've been looking to get back into Hillsborough County. We need to be there, but the heart offices have been off limits because of COVID for more than a year. And finding space that will accommodate the electronics to be able to stream, as well as to allow public access, has been a little challenge. But Hillsborough County is accommodating, and we will be in the county building down in Kennedy Street. It will be a hybrid meeting, however. There will be no public access. The only people really there will be board members who are required for a quorum and limited TBARTA staff. Everyone else who needs to participate. So, for example, Bill, you will be getting a WebEx invitation. We'll talk about that later. There will be no Zoom for that meeting because Hillsborough County does not do Zoom, but very similarly, they use the WebEx platform. So someone like Bill will participate via a WebEx. Anybody who wants to watch, it will be streamed to our YouTube channel. There will not be a Zoom stream, but there will be public access to watch that on the TBARTA YouTube channel. And that's how we'll handle that. But it's a new experience for us. We need a Hillsborough County location. I don't know if that's where we'll land for some of the meetings in 2021, but especially with the COVID situation right now, every meeting space has different rules. And especially when it comes to electronics, the microphones, the streaming, there's some challenges with that everywhere you go, but we're making the best of it. And we're looking forward to being back in Hillsborough County next Friday. And that's it for me. Any questions, I'm happy to take.
Good. Questions of Chris? Thanks for the update and thanks for the good information in the packet.
Thank you.
And the final agenda item is any items that the committee would like me to specifically bring before the TBARTA board. I would like, with the committee's permission, to give them the flavor of our discussion about the RRT and bring up some of those points. Are there any other particular items you'd like to have me bring up? Bob Henyon.
Yes, for many years, we didn't have a quorum on the CAC here. And we simply did things by consensus. We're able to send back messages to the board that way of things that we felt. I really think it's important that we push them on filling those mayor's alternate slots. This has been dragging for a long time. And if we could get a consensus here and have Bill bring that back to the board that we really want them to do that, because then they can fulfill having their own quorum.
Can I make a suggestion, Mr. Chair?
Please, go ahead.
Both mayor's offices are aware of this, and Mayor Kreisman's taking action on that. I know that to be true. I don't know about Mayor Castor's office, but I would suggest maybe we give them a chance, to take advantage of this. Certainly, if we see, let's say, Mayor Castor's office, say we're going to be in Hillsborough next week, and she may be there. If the CAC sees meetings where the mayor's position is still vacant and that counts against our quorum, I think it would give the CAC some impetus to kind of raise its hand and say, hey, mayors, you've had this new tool and we've noticed that you're not using it. My suggestion would be to give the mayors a chance. I know that one of the two is going to be doing that already, but that's just a recommendation.
Okay, either way works, as long as they fill those slots and therefore can have a quorum.
Thank you, Bob. Any other items that the committee would like me to bring before the TBARTA board?
Bill Johnson.
Bill Johnson, go ahead.
Kind of along the same lines, because we're meeting by Zoom, we can't take any action. And now we were able to get by that today because we didn't have anything that we felt we needed to make a motion on and tell the board. It's a problem going forward, I think, when we're continuing to do Zoom, or if there's an action, are we going to meet in person someplace? Is that the plan?
Brian, you or Chris want to give them the current guidelines?
Yeah, I think for example, when we set the agenda for this month and we saw that other than the minutes, there were no action items, we made a decision to go with a Zoom meeting. However, in other months when we're looking at the agenda, if there's something that's, for example, if we have an item that's going to go to the board for approval, let's say we've reached another milestone in the RRT and we're going to ask the board to make a decision on it. But likewise, we would want to bring it to the CAC for a vote and action. So if we know we're going to have an agenda item like that, then yeah, we would push for an in-person meeting.
Thank you.
Does that help you, Bill? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we made the decision to do this one by Zoom due primarily to a lack of action items and to make it more convenient for the committee members. So any other points that the committee would like me to bring before the TBARTA board before we adjourn?
I would make, Mr. Chairman, if I could be recognized.
Please.
Just to follow up, I do know the next CAC meeting is scheduled for PSTA. When we meet at PSTA, because there are COVID restrictions, it's very important that if you're going to attend, you need to let Jennifer know. And if you're not going to attend, you need to let her know as well, because they want a seating chart several days ahead of time. And Jennifer can advise you on the specifics of that. So if we're going to meet in public and if we're going to stick with that in October, please be mindful of just letting Jennifer know I will be able to meet, I will not be able to meet, because they do need to they have more rigid procedures. Whereas obviously with Zoom, we can be a little more flexible. Those who can make it obviously are welcome and can attend. If you can't, it's obviously we move forward. Only thing I had to add, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Chris. And I think that brings up the point. Our next meeting is October 13th. We so far will plan to have that as an in-person meeting or a hybrid meeting. And if you can attend and if we need a quorum, we would certainly want your support. Karen Mullins, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we are in legislative session season. So if there's anything coming down the pike, we'd like to get an update on that from the board. Thank you.
Yeah, committee meetings are this month. So. Anything else? Well, this has been a good meeting. I appreciate everyone taking the time to join us today. We had a good discussion, covered a lot of items, and with that, the meeting will stand adjourned.